So we've heard now 4 or 5 stories, anecdotes, already had some data points in it, also backed up by research. And I think that's a great segue to actually Cherian's work. You have written a book focusing on hate speech in the region, and I was wondering whether you would be willing to distill from these 4 or 5 narratives some of the common elements that you see that they share, but also probably distinctions you see across different countries in the region, and what is different from South Asia versus other parts of the world where hate speech, of course, is also of great concern. So that would be quite wonderful if you could spend maybe 4 or 5 minutes to report on your findings. Thank you.
It would be my pleasure. Thank you. I think what these societies certainly have in common is a history of communal violence. And it's not surprising in such societies that there would be a public impulse to try to nip ethnic and religious hatred in the bud. And of course, there's already an internationally recognized right to be protected from incitement to harm such as discrimination, hatred, and violence. But the question that arises in these societies with a strong sense that they are on the brink of violence is the question of whether it is enough to wait for undeniably harmful effects to be manifest downstream, so to speak. Why not instead tackle the problem upstream? Supposedly closer to the source of hatred by prohibiting even the wounding of ethnic and religious feelings through various insult laws such as blasphemy. This approach has a lot of intuitive appeal. It is not unique to South Asia. My own country, Singapore, is sold on this idea. Prohibiting racial and religious insult is a national policy written into law. Many of these inherited from the British as a common heritage with much of South Asia. And this policy of actually banning the wounding of religious and ethnic feelings seems to enjoy broad public support. But I think what I've discovered in my research is that in most societies, this approach backfires badly. The problem is that insult laws essentially enshrine a legal right to take offense. They then oblige the state with all its coercive might to step in when a group claims righteous indignation. And although such eruptions of offendedness are usually portrayed as spontaneous, visceral, impossible to control, in practically every major case that I've seen, they are in fact manufactured by political entrepreneurs who gain from that offense taking. So this freewheeling combination of traditional hate speech or offense giving with politicized indignation or offense taking is what my book calls hate spin, as opposed to simply hate speech. And I think one of the paradoxical features of the societies that we've looked at that have insult laws that seem to have a low threshold for intervention is that in these societies with seemingly very strict laws, hate speech continues to be rampant. And this is not because the internet is so hard to regulate, although that is possibly one factor. There is a much deeper issue, which is that the power to take offense is not democratically distributed. Some people, politicians from the dominant majority, religious authorities who represent the orthodoxy, get to decide which expression is intolerably offensive and which can be allowed. Marginalized groups do not enjoy that privilege. Thus, when you have hate speech laws superimposed on a society that does not protect equality as a fundamental pillar of democracy, the result is essentially a double whammy for vulnerable minorities. They are, on the one hand, victims of incitement that occurs regularly with total impunity, while at the same time, their own attempts to speak up, even as we've heard, for interfaith dialogue, for peace building, are themselves silenced as being offensive to the majority culture. So I think any hate speech regulation should not be seen in isolation. whether it results in increased justice and social well-being depends a great deal on the state of anti-discrimination and equality protecting frameworks. And I've seen this again and again, not just in South Asia, Indonesia in Southeast Asia is another classic example where this is happening right now. This combination of blasphemy laws that seem to promote respect for religion occurring side by side with impunity for quite deadly hate speech or dangerous speech, as Susan would put it. And that's the dynamic that I see. Thank you.